Hey everyone, it's LS, and you might have noticed the thumbnail is really scuffed, as is the video, as it has no editing. I have not done this in a really long time. I hope that you enjoyed the thumbnail. Leave a message in the comments below if you did. And we're just going to do the mid-patch update. So this is patch 12.5b, and this means that we are stuck with this patch for a really long time. The game is in an awful state. A lot of people have already basically spoken out about the current meta and how repetitive everything is, as well as just the way that Riot is approaching a lot of the changes. So let's get right into the meat of it. So we're taking care of some urgent mid-patch balances before we go AFK for a week. Yeah. All right, well. Philios base armor is going to go 28 to 26, and base health is now down by an auto attack, basically, in lane. So his armor is less, and then he loses an auto. Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll have a little bit more kill threshold. I mean, that's really it. Champions like Varus or something, or anyone who uses, like, lethality in lane against him is going to have an easier time as well, dealing damage, but realistically, that's it. Ashe, W Monocross, 70 at all ranks to 75 to 55. Wow, amazing. So it's going to be higher at rank 1, but obviously because, you put points into W, it does become more spammable. R cooldown 100 to 60 to 80 to 60. That is actually large because with cooldown reduction, this gets to a point where Ashe is basically always going to have R up every 2 waves. That's just what this is going to have happen. Is she's going to be able to R off of cooldown. If she Rs to engage, this is actually a massive buff for Ashe. So I thought that initially they weren't going to do anything to Ashe because I think that you can really tip the scales to where she is just a lane neutralizer, a lane bully. She doesn't actually do anything other than that. And then it's just very anti-fun because Ashe pairs with a lot of supports to either neutralize or just outright win mass majority of lanes. It's very difficult to interact with Ashe. And I feel like these changes are actually impactful enough when you consider the nerfs that other marksmen have had, as well as how difficult some other marksmen already are in order to pick them in bot lane. So, I mean, there's that. Draven, base AD is up by 2. So a lot of people talk about stuff like this about, imagine how many times an AD carry auto attacks throughout a game. And, then they end up doing like some multiplication thing where it's like, he threw out 1,500 auto attacks this game. This is 3,000 more damage at the end of the end game score. None of that matters. And whenever someone says something like that, you instantly realize that they don't actually get what these buffs actually mean. So basically, how often does Draven auto-attack the enemy champion inside of laning phase? That's the real conversion here, right? Is how likely is it that the amount of auto-attacks that he throws out inside of a laning phase equates to a kill or something like that? Because it doesn't matter that he's padding his end game stats. That doesn't actually mean anything, right? You're saying something that it sounds cool in theory, right? Wow, 3,000 more damage throughout the course of a game. But in practicality, it doesn't matter, right? If the opponent's recalling with 200 HP, and this buff means they're recalling with 100 HP, it doesn't matter. Don't get me wrong, the 2 AD is something nice. I do think it is bigger for mid and top lane Draven than it is for bot lane Draven, because I think like in an all-in combo or even leading in up to an all-in combo, he's probably weaving like 10 auto attacks, which, yeah, that can be nice, but and then, I mean, he does have ratios on some of his abilities, so this is okay in that regard, but other than that, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Jinx, Q Fishbones, Monocost 16 to 20 to 20 at all ranks. Q Fishbones range 100 to 200 to 80 to 200. So they are just stunting it pretty much early on. They're making her initial laning phase a little bit weak. But the funny thing is that Jinx was really picking her matchups, last year or something. People didn't want to necessarily pick Jinx. And she was really just selecting what matchup she was going into. But realistically, I don't think something like this is actually going to harm her all that much. I think that people will just learn to adjust. I mean, you have plenty of Jinx players that actually go 3 cookies anyway, and they don't end up using the 3 cookies. And so it's almost funny in the sense that, like, if they realize that the mana that they would actually get from using the cookies is more than enough to, like, fix these issues, like, which is really, I mean, it's funny in that regard, if people pause and look at stuff like that. But again, I mean, you can just find other ways to lane in order to still get Jinx in the same exact position that you would want her for mid and late game, and it doesn't change why you're picking Jinx. So this isn't really too big of a nerf either. But it is a nerf against a champion like Ashe or something, who I already thought should have been coupled with like Senna and Varus as like some of the champion answers to the current trifecta that's happening in bot lane. Lucian, AD growth, 2.3 to 2.9. So he ends up getting a longsword at level 18. This is really big for mid lane Lucian, and it's really big for top lane Lucian. Passive vigilance bonus magic damage on hit goes up by 10% AD. That's really big as well for Lucian. Even in the early laning phases, this does allow him to be more of a lane bully. So they are buffing Ashe. They are buffing Lucian. Lucian obviously pairs with a lot of enchanters and whatnot, so they are definitely doing things to try to move the Jinx and Aphelios, and whether or not there's any actual reality of them getting moved out, I don't think is actually reflected by the nerfs that they're receiving right here, but rather the buffs that other champions are getting, which should be Riot's main prerogative when going into patches. It should just be buffing up other champions instead of just, you know, outright nerfing things, but whatever. Master Yi goes up by 49 HP, just base health, which is really big because I think that Yi should probably just be a mid or a top laner. The E true damage, it seems like it's being reverted. Base damage reverted only. Okay, so 30 to 62, whereas before it was 30 to 58, so he ends up getting 4 true damage. I mean, when his attack speed's through the roof later on, this is definitely big for him. The R cooldown is going down to 85 seconds at all ranks. Again, Yi doesn't actually get CDR items early on whatsoever, so unless he takes like scaling CDR or something from the rune, this doesn't really impact anything. I mean, it is nice, right? He gets access to pretty much rank 3 CDR now, almost at rank 1, but I mean, that's fine. Rise, passive maximum mana increased 5% per 100 AP to 10% per 100 AP. So they're trying to shift him into an AP build. Q damage, 75 to 175 plus 40% AP plus 3% bonus mana to 70 to 150. So he's losing 25 plus 45% AP plus 3% bonus mana. So as long as he finds a way to weave in an AP item, I guess he'll probably end up being 5% AP. I mean, it's not the end of the world. So the question ends up becoming is what actually ends up going on here with his itemization. I think people are just going to figure out a way to weave Rise's itemization to be a little bit different, and then his Q is still going to be fine. Now, I am uncertain on if this does affect any of his wave clear, and if that is the case, then yes, it does hurt. One of the main reasons why Rise is being picked right now. One of the cool things, though, is that no one's really playing Rise up in top lane yet, and I do think that Rise's best role was up in top lane, and with the way that this just is right now, I just, again, imagine that something will happen with his itemization that weaves in an AP item, and then stuff ends up getting fixed or something. So, I mean, I think that's fine, because I think with the 5% per 100 AP to the 10% plus the increase on AP, I think that Rise will end up being fine. Varus, W passive bonus magic damage on hit. This is actually very big. 7 to 30 or 7 to 15 plus 30% AP to 7 to 21. So the thing though with his W is that he doesn't end up maxing this until last, which does feel kind of bad. So they are increasing his later game stuff. Obviously, AP Varus, I do think, put points in this, but our base magic damage as well is going up. So AP Varus actually got some love here a little bit because obviously it has penetration and stuff. Rank 2, getting 50 extra magic damage when typically Varus is going to be building lethality or like armor pen or something like that doesn't really do anything. This is a buff to, I mean, it is just a buff. It deals a little bit more damage, but it doesn't do that much. And then level 16 Varus, I mean, you have bigger things on your, you have bigger issues if you're really worrying about the 100 damage that it's getting. So, I mean, it's a very, very minor change for Varus, but, you know, because nothing really comes online until mid and late game anyway. Zeri, base AD is down by 5. Health growth is up now. She actually gets tankier, which is very interesting because she builds Titanic Hydra still, no? Or maybe she doesn't. Base attack damage, charge magic damage ratio based on target's max health, 3 to 15% to 1 to 10%, 0.5% levels 1 through 7, plus 1% levels 8 to 13, okay? Q total physical damage 9 to 25 plus 100% 10% AD to 10 to 30 plus 110% AD. Okay. E cooldown 23 to 19 to 23 seconds at all ranks. That is very big. And then E pierce damage is 80 to 100% to 60 to 100%. R stacks per champion hit by initial lightning crash 3 to 4, and then R bonus movement speed is down. Okay, so they're making her able to be stuck to easier. Like you can hold her down a lot easier, and that means that all things are going to be good in that regard. But she is going to be squishier. So you can hold her down easier. She is going to be squishier, and those are pretty much the direction that they are going with Zeri. I think with Ashe coming back, I think that Ashe is probably one of the champions that's very good against Zeri, and I know that Zeri is not being utilized as a flex champion as much as she was when she initially came out, and so I think that this is all really good signs. I also think that like Lucian with Enchanter can probably end up being good against her as well, so I think in that regard, it is quite good. Items, Locket of Iron Solari, Consecrate, passive, bonus armor, and magic resist, 5 to 3. Wow. Devotion active, shield amount, 230 to 385 to 200 to 365. So obviously, the real thing is that it loses so much early on, but the thing that I would say is that it's very rare that the entirety of the shield is actually chewed through when you activate Locket. The only time where this actually does happen is against like Karthus ult, where you activate it while the Requiem is channeling, and then it does actually absorb the entirety. The entire shield will be chewed through. But whenever you see shield buffs or like buffs to shields, you have to really ask yourself like how practical is it that the entirety of the shield is actually chewed through, and in most cases it just isn't. So okay. Let's recap. So yes, Ashe change really big. Jinx manageable. Lucian change really big. Draven mid and top, it's really big. Aphelios is more vulnerable. Varus doesn't really do anything. I mean, it really doesn't. I mean, AP Varus does get some love, but realistically doesn't really do anything. Ryze is going to have to change how he plays. Zeri is definitely more balanced, and I do not think that this ever is going to be enough for Master Yi to, somehow deal with his current win rate issues that I think everyone's complaining about. So the meta has a lot of other issues in it right now. Jungle very stagnant. AD carries got bored. Hopefully this does open up AD carry stuff. But with the way that they're opening up AD carry stuff, so Senna wasn't actually touched here, and then Ashe is getting such a nice buff for her. Ashe, again, Ashe is a very problematic AD carry, in that, again, she either neutralizes everyone or she just wins versus everyone. And if this ends up being the case, then Ashe immediately gets banned. Now, if Ashe is getting banned on red side, we're now creating, again, another similar loop where you've created a problematic AD carry, and now you're creating a cycle again, rather than just making other AD carries get buffed. So like Ezreal is obviously left off of the radar here. Sivir is nowhere to be found. Kog'Maw, Twitch are also nowhere to be found. So there's not a whole lot of diversity. What's happening right now is two really big lane bullies and lane neutralizers have been buffed, and then Jinx and Aphelios as the late game champions are getting tagged. Varus is getting a placebo buff. Other things that's happening is like Ryze in mid lane right now. Players aren't really picking champions that are really good against Ryze thematically, or like they're not drafting team comps that make Ryze bad and then playing around it. The thing with Ryze is that a lot of players complain against playing against Ryze because Ryze, for the Ryze player, it's a lot easier to play the game, and for the Ryze team, it's a lot easier to play because everything's a lot more straightforward with like Ryze shoves mid, Ryze roams. So the enemy jungler's under more pressure, the enemy bot lane's under more pressure, but players don't want to be asked to learn how to manage their waves better or like have this be a thing that they consider, and then they intentionally play around it and they draft in a way where Ryze ends up being a liability for the enemy team. And so with that being the case, the meta ends up stagnating, or the meta ends up being entirely pulled by the gravity of just a few champions, and then everyone is just trying to like live in their orbit without any way to try to just actually pull the rug out from under them. And this is what's causing the stagnation in pro play meta right now. So I do not think that pro play meta globally reflects actually current champion power levels inside of League of Legends that is reflected by the current balance state. I think that a lot of champions that are extremely good in the game right now are not being picked, or they've been picked basically only a handful of times across the entire globe, and I think that that's really sad, and I think a lot of that does stem from pro players do not want to move out of their comfort zone in order to try to figure out how to either play the game differently in order to make, the aforementioned champions weaker or worse or not as viable, nor do they want to go and learn how to, play the new matchups or play the new things in order to get through the laning phases or do certain things in laning phases and whatnot. And so what ends up happening is we're all stagnating. And then with mid-split carrying on, players are more afraid to lose because there's more on the line with playoffs, and that's what's going on. So For solo queue, some of these changes are nightmares. I do agree. Lucian, again, he can go mid and top. Draven's not being played in solo queue. Ashe inside of solo queue, it's very, I mean, it's easy to play Ashe, right? So, I mean, that's pretty good. Lucian inside of solo queue, you're probably going to end up losing. Again, he's relying on pairing, and then, people trying to play mid and top Lucian. Do not think these changes are enough. For everything else, it's pretty balanced. I mean, it's not really going to impact solo queue. If people are wondering, are these changes going to affect, like, my Patreon solo queue or clash tier lists? No, not really. I don't think any of the changes here really reflect anything that's going to change too much there. So that's pretty much it. I hope you guys liked the scuffed rundown. It's been a long time since I've done one like these, and that is it. So yeah, there's no skins on patch B. There's no skins.